working? Is it working? Are we staying? Huh. Hello. So sorry for the different angle today. My light went out last night. I have yet to replace the light bulb. So, you have the sun. Anyway, moving on. Anyway, hello, Faith Jacobs here again, and I wanted to talk to you about why you should buy this book. I always get so nervous when doing these videos because I feel like a beggar. I feel like, buy my book, please, please. No, seriously though, I do want to talk about why I feel that Faithfully Yours Mozart is a good addition to your library of neurodivergent books. So, you know, I have done my fair share of research, and I have read my fair share of Mozart books. I've seen my fair share of a lot of things. I have seen and watched and read, and I have a few on my shelf, and I love the world of Mozart because there are so many different opinions, and there are so many different thoughts and feelings and takes on Mozart. But the one take that I have not seen, and I feel like what makes this book even more unique, is the fact that it is a Mozart from a perspective of disability. And, well, what does that mean? Well, there are those who suggest that Mozart was neurodivergent, that he was disabled. And the problem with trying to find anything, relating to that is it's often from a clinical perspective. There are high-end research papers by researchers who go through and they, what's the word? They try to decode Mozart's brain, and some of the opinions and the views and things that I've seen, even from legitimate, like, Mozartian researchers, I don't like. And it's so weird that this topic is not explored more, about Mozart being possibly a historical figure who was on the spectrum, when what's so interesting is I've only seen one other article, particularly on YouTube, and it wasn't from somebody who was on the spectrum. They were the sibling of somebody who was on the spectrum, but they themselves, at least to my knowledge, are not. And it was a nice effort to talk about Mozart being autistic, possibly, but at the same time, I don't see too many, autistic creators talking about Mozart in the way that I have sort of chosen to write about him. And that's why Faithfully Yours Mozart is not another it's not just another Mozart story out there that rehashes the same story as, say, Amadeus. It is not the same sort of rehashing of the story that you've seen in any of the Mozart movies and TV shows. As a matter of fact, it does more. What I intended for Faithfully Yours Mozart is I intended a novel that would cover the 10 years of marriage that he had to Constanza. So starting with their courtship and eventually moving on into the later years of their life, you know, for as brief a time as they were together. That's what this story is about, but it's not told in the same manner as, let's say, again, I can only go back to Amadeus because I think that's the one that most people would know. But if you watch any Mozart movie, or even if, oh, another one that people might know, Mozart Das Musical, the Austrian musical about Mozart, particularly the 2015 revival cast, there is there are a couple of things that most Mozart pieces of fiction don't do. Number one, they do not go beyond the surface. Mozart is often quite shallow in some of these portrayals. I've said it, and I think I said it in one of my forewords actually for my book, is that he is either a drunkard, a man-child, a simpleton, he's a spoiled, rotten genius. There are only a couple of exceptions to that take on Mozart. There are only a few exceptions to that. Beautifully, we'll shout out once again Saving Mozart, which is a beautiful, beautiful project that is coming to Vienna next year. And that is the closest thing to, I think, a more complicated take on Mozart in the modern times. Right now in this year, it's so, you know, in this year alone, I have seen 3 projects about General Mozart. And it's amazing that his sister is getting a chance in the spotlight, and they're trying to humanize General Mozart's story, all these different Mozart projects out there about her. I, however, personally, whenever I was doing my research, I did not connect with General. Partially because she was not the woman, I will say, who touched my heart. That firmly belongs to Constanza Weber, who I feel has been misrepresented. And that's another reason why Faithfully Yours Mozart is different from other Mozart books out there, particularly Mozart fiction books. It does not treat Constanza like a doxy. It doesn't paint her like a slut. It doesn't make her out to be this disloyal, dishonest, manipulative, you know. Like, I have seen far too many Constanzas on stage, and I didn't like them. And I'll tell you why I didn't like them. I didn't like the Constanzas that I have seen on the stage, on screen, with the exception of one from the 30s. The bar is low. The bar is very low, because oftentimes Constanza just is treated as a light skirt, according to the Regency era term. She is considered a loose woman. I've said this before. And I don't do that here in Faithfully Yours Mozart. In Faithfully Yours Mozart, Constanza has as much agency as Wolfgang does. She cares for him as much as he comes to care for her. They grow together. They don't... There is never a moment in this book where Constanza and Wolfgang are pitted against each other. I believe my actress for Constanza even said it best. They are always fighting for one another in this story. There's never, oh, now they're mad at each other moments, and it's going to be that cliche, dramatic moment you see in like a romantic drama where it's like, great, now I hate you. Instead, it's like, okay, so why aren't you fighting for yourself? I'm fighting for... It's the best way to describe this series is that it was very much inspired by the themes that you see in Queen Charlotte. I was very much inspired by Queen Charlotte while writing this book. The themes of mental health difficulties, of chronic illness, of facing, you know, down the lions, of fighting for your partner. You know, the scene where she is like, fight with me, fight for me, you know, tell me that you don't love me, and, you know, like you're pushing me away, you know, tell me you have to, if I will go if you tell me that you don't love me, is what Queen Charlotte says to George. And I was so inspired by how beautiful that was, that I wanted to, I wanted something that was similar. And I thought to myself, why can we not, if we can sit there and we can watch this fictionalized take on the story of King George and Queen Charlotte. You know, and King George faced an illness that we don't understand necessarily, and there is evidence to suggest that maybe it wasn't what it was initially suggested to be that he suffered from. I believe I read somewhere, and this will be a different video at some point, or maybe even a podcast episode, but I think George suffered some abuse in his life when he was younger. It was pretty bad. Like he went through some stuff. He didn't just end up like that on a whim. Something happened that like led to such unhappiness in that poor man. Really, truly in real life. And but it inspired Faithfully Yours Mozart entirely. The whole of the series was partially inspired by Queen Charlotte. So if you liked that story, you may find yourself falling in love and loving Faithfully Yours Mozart, because it's one of those stories that I don't know, I truly and honestly value a story that is willing to look at somebody in a similar manner to the way that Mozart Das Musical looks at Wolfgang through a psychological profile. I wanted Faithfully Yours Mozart to be kinder to the relationship of Constanza and Wolfgang, and to treat them with dignity and respect and empathy, and to look at them through the eyes of, as I mentioned, disability and chronic illness, and even a medical field at the time that would not have understood Wolfgang as he was. And I wanted to examine his quirks, and I wanted to examine the things that have been kind of erased and left out. As a matter of fact, would you believe that Wolfgang knew sign language? That he was surrounded by disability. He knew people who were blind and deaf, and at one point in his life, he even meets another historical figure who we believe was on the spectrum, that would be Thomas Jefferson. You know, there are so many people who he interacts with in his letters and in his history, and the connections that you go, I can't believe that like he was alive when this person was alive. He met Giacomo Casanova. He wrote Don Giovanni with Giacomo Casanova. There are so many more interesting tidbits to Mozart's story than just he was born, he was hailed a genius, oh, he fell in love once, got his heart broken, you know, fell in love again, married, and then died. Like, I swear, every single time I go through and I watch any Mozart movie or TV show or read the book, you know, it's some variant of he was there, he was super busy, and then all of a sudden he fell in love and then nothing happened. I want to examine Wolfgang as a father, a husband, a betrothed, They would not say boyfriend, but basically, you know, as Constanza's boyfriend. But I want to look at Wolfgang through the eyes of humanization. I want the in-between moments. This is a little bit of a spoiler. I mean, it's nothing major for the story, but there is a moment where Wolfgang goes into the kitchen and he bakes a pie with Constanza. Like, I don't want us just to look at Wolfgang from the eyes of the composer who was creating all these operas and doing all these things. That's nice, and that will be there, you know, in the background, and there are moments where Wolfgang is composing, and there are moments where he is, you know, directing an orchestra, but that's not really what Faithfully Yours Mozart is about. It's really about the love story of him and Constanza, and how she champions him, and how they champion each other, even through trials and hardship and difficulty. You know, their love never falters. Their love never wavers. Their love never falls apart. Like, there is nothing in any of Wolfgang's letters to suggest that he had, you know, extramarital affairs. It's, you know, like, unless it's like direct and is directly stated that, oh, he did this, this, and this, and unless I haven't found anything in even Constanza's biography to suggest it, you know, like I've read through all the letters. I have them on my shelves. I go through them all the time. There's nothing in his letters, and there's nothing in the recollections of anybody else that I have read to suggest that beyond Aloysia, who I really don't think loved him, just loved what he could bring her, and Constanza, Wolfgang had no other interest. I think maybe he was introduced to love, you know, as a young man, but his gaze was set on Constanza and before her elder sister Aloysia. And so, like, there's no, even in this story, there's no real villain. I mean, maybe you consider Leopold Mozart a villain. I certainly do. He was a narcissistic asshole. And he was horrible to Wolfgang. He was completely horrible to him. You know, no matter how hard Wolfgang tried, his dad just never allowed Wolfgang to just be himself. And you'll see so many different storylines, and I suppose the main purpose of this, again, it's a 5-book series, with one coming out in March. So please, 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 I implore you, if you can, please buy Faithfully Yours Mozart. I truly believe that you'll relate to him more than you realize. I mean, real talk. When I began writing this, in 2022, 2023, somewhere around that range, I was beginning to write this story. You know, I went into this not knowing what to do with all this information. I thought to myself, maybe I'd pitch a TV show. Funny. But I tell you this simply to be honest. I didn't realize how much misinformation there really is about Wolfgang and Constanza when I started doing my research. I didn't realize how much people believe in the media, like particularly Amadeus. I really didn't realize all these things. I also didn't realize that that there would be, you know, opposition to writing a neurodivergent Wolfgang. I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but this was supposed to be an audio drama script, and it still was one, but not without its trials. But I sat there and I looked at this and I thought to myself, You know, I've seen a lot of Mozart movies, and I've seen a lot of documentaries, and I've seen a lot of things. But nobody ever talks about how Wolfgang just is, how there are so many moments, and it's hard to explain them. You really have to experience what I've written in this book in order to understand. That there are just moments in Wolfgang's letters that inspired the moments that I wrote in the book. And it's all based on historical truth. The moments and the dialogue and everything that I've written might be fictional, but this is all based on real historical truth. Everything from the animals that Wolfgang adored, such as dogs and horses and birds, particularly starlings and canaries, or he just, to the way that he had a routine, you know, that he had to stick to a daily routine, eating by 8, teaching by, getting dressed by 9, teaching by 10, going out maybe by 12, having some kind of lunch or dinner, and like he has a whole routine of like how he goes about his day. And then that changes after he gets married a little bit, but it adjusts, and he adjusts, and with her, with Constanza, and what a lot of other Mozart stories also leave out, and what I did not, was the fact that there are moments where Wolfgang will get ill, and it's not me like just enjoying like a hurt comfort like scene. No, it's really based on real medical information. It's like, oh, he was sick with malaise in May, or he got sick with a cold in June, or he had this and this in like this time, or he had May allergies. Wolfgang always had, I'm gonna butcher this, but he had a post-nasal drip. Um, it's a very fancy word. It starts with C. I think it's catara or something, kata or something like that. He would get sick around May, and I'm thinking you've got like May allergies or something. So, but like there's a whole list of all the times in Wolfgang's life when he was unwell, and you'll see come some of the later books in the series when it's not just a cold that he faces, it's not just May allergies, it's not just maybe a little fever, being a little worn down. I mean, he gets really, really severely sick. Like, we're talking Little Women, Beth March sick. And it gets very, 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 very unwell. And he requires a lot of care. It gets intense, because unlike, again, most Mozart books and movies skip the fact that Constanza lost a lot of babies, and they lost a lot of children. And some people, and if you're one of those people out there who denies that Wolfgang faced depression, you have no understanding of this man. You have zero understanding of Wolfgang as a person. He faced depression and grief and anxiety and pressure and loss and pain and chronic health and mental health difficulties and disability on top of that. So once again, Faithfully Yours, Mozart is not just another, oh, Wolfgang did this, and this, and it's all about him as a musician. It's about him as a person. And I would really, really implore you, if you can, to help me, spread the word, get this out there. It's a very important book series to me. Both this and book 2 through 5 are very important books to me because it's never been done before. As much as there are Mozart books out there, it's never been done like this. So that's important to me. Anyway, daylight is fading and I need to go and get myself a lamp, a light bulb replacer. A lamp? I need a, well, I do need a lamp. There's never enough light. But I need to get myself a new light bulb before it gets too dark, and to continue my research for the remainder of the Mozart book series. So, until next time, I am Faith Jacobs, signing off. Bye-bye. I love this plush so much. It's a spoiled plush. It's my spoiled little plush.